Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me, and welcome to another fantastic episode here. I've got a special crew joining me. We've got Pete Pardo from Tranquility. How are you doing today?
Good, Brendan. Thanks. Thanks for having
Well,
me.
yeah, absolutely. Loving the white snake shirt that you got on. Representing, right? Grant Arthur from Warehouse. How you doing?
All right, good. Nice to see you, Brendan. Nice to see everybody.
What's on the hat today? I can't read it.
It says
Box.
Vox.
Oh, very good. That's a nice, appropriate thing to have on as well. And of course, we got Phil Aston wearing a now spinning T-shirt from where
Hi.
he's from. So, how are you doing today?
All right. Thank you. Great to be here.
All right. So, we got a cool topic for you guys joining in. What are your five desert island albums? And interestingly, I actually Googled and looked at this a little bit because people call it the desert island albums and also the deserted island albums, right? Which is it, right? Well, it actually turns out desert just means abandoned. So I think you can go either way on it. I'm going with what are your five desert island albums? And we've all played this game before. If you're going to a desert island and you could only take five albums and never listen to anything again, what would those be, right? And I know myself, 13,000 CDs to choose from. How am I only picking five? So this turned out to be a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be. I myself approached it a little differently. We've done some episodes on here where we've talked about perfect albums and different things like that. And I didn't want to repeat that. So I actually pushed aside a few that I might normally take. So those of you that watch my channel where I've already talked about this topic independently, you're going to see some different things from me at least. But I want to go around the room now and basically get everyone's sort of criteria or thought. As I said, I approached it a little bit differently for that reason. But what is it, Grant, that you thought about when grabbing these albums?
Well, if I really would want to take something to a desert island, all I would need would be the Beatles catalog, and I could easily pick five, and
Yeah,
I'd be happy. That's all I would ever need in my whole life.
you could stay with one artist, one
Yeah,
genre, and be
that's
happy.
the Beatles. That's all I need.
Okay.
That's all I need. I can listen to it over and over again and never get tired of it. But for this exercise, the way I approached it would be, well, I guess it'd be what I'm into at the moment. But
Oh,
of course, I'm going to choose a Beatles album. Of course,
mhm.
I always do. I don't talk the Beatles on my channel because there's no reason to talk about them.
Yeah.
Everything that's already been said has been said, but still number one. And but I figured I just kind of grabbed certain things that I would need for that. I really, the criteria was I can listen to these records over and over again
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
not get tired. So that's really how I base it.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. One of my thoughts in that was just, solid start to finish, which is that idea of you never get tired of it. You can listen to it. Pete, what was some of the things you were thinking about when selecting your albums?
So, as someone who owns just as much music as you, Brendan, this is a near impossible task. When you have so many hundreds and thousands of albums that you just love, and I've done this exercise on Sea of Tranquility before, and it's like every time I do something like this, I try to take a different approach because the more I've thought about it. So let's say you have your whole life leading up to this point where you have history with albums and you've had decades, years, whatever, with specific albums that you deem as your favorites and your all-time classics. So I was kind of looking at it this morning because I was like racking my brain all week getting ready for this, and I just couldn't come up with like five. And I'm like, well, so I said, let me take a different approach. So if I were told like next week that your life here is done. We're going to send you to this island for the rest of your life. We're going to
Right.
set you up with a generator and a turntable or CD player, whatever it is you want. And you can only take five albums. What would you take? And I'm thinking, all right, well, so many of my like all-time favorite albums, I've heard a million times.
Yeah.
I know them start to finish backwards, put reverse the order, whatever. They're in my brain. I know them note for note. And I'm like, do I really want to take some of those that I know so well with me to the desert island for the rest of my life, however long that is? Or do I want to take albums that maybe either I don't quite know as well as some of those five I originally thought about, or do I want to take some albums that might have a lot more songs on them than some of the others. Hint, hint, maybe
Yeah.
non-studio releases, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of the approach that I did. So while the bands that I've chosen probably aren't surprising to anybody, it's what I chose that might be a little bit of a surprise. So I tried to, because I could have easily picked my five favorite albums of all time. That was, to me, that was the low-hanging fruit. But I
Right.
was like, God, I know those albums so well. Would I really want to still listen to them for the next, and only them for the next 20 years on the desert island? I don't know. So I'll stop talking there because I don't want to give too much away.
Well, Pete, I hope you have more than 20 years left in your life if you go to
I
a
would hope
desert
so,
island.
but I'm almost 60, so you
Oh,
never
you
know.
never know.
That's true. That's true. We're watching the rockers drop at all ages these days, so
I
you
can
never
only
know.
hope for 20 plus years, right? That is
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
plan, but you just never know.
That
I
So
is
like
true.
the idea that Pete has for this, but the thing is, if I could never listen to the Beatles again,
Uh-huh.
what's the point?
Right.
So I would take all I could take. I could get by with everything else
We would have
without it,
to
but
change
I
it to five.
even though it's in my even though it's in my brain, but I
Right.
want to hear it. I want to be immersed in it.
Yeah.
And just because it's a memory isn't enough for me, you know.
I
But I love what I this is going to be fun. I'll get
I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I have the same thought that you did, Pete. There are certain ones that I do know inside and out. I chose not to grab them because, like you said, I could sing those albums to myself if I wanted to, but I don't reach for them. They may be favorite albums, but I just don't reach for them because I wore them out when I was a kid. Um, but one of the things that I thought a lot about was the nostalgic part or the memories part, which I think both so far, Grant and Pete, both you guys have touched on a bit, where if I was going to be there and that's all I was going to listen to, picking an album that has such great memories, but also is a really good album, always puts me in a good mood to hear it. That was some of the stuff I was thinking about, at least. So, Phil, what was the stuff going through your head in terms of being able to make these selections?
Well, as we've had, this is the third in this series, isn't it? We've had one with 10 out of 10 albums, and then it was albums everyone should hear or everyone should own. There was a kind of feeling that I could just copy and paste everything I've said so far across each one, because
Yes.
obviously the
right.
first albums I mentioned in the first one we did together were obviously very important albums.
Hmm.
And I've always thought if I had to run out the house because I could only take one album, then the Montrose album would probably be under my arm. So I've done a little bit what Pete said, where I thought, well, I know that one.
Hmm.
I've also thought, well, I'm presuming that we're taking these albums to a desert island, so maybe I've already got those in my head or they're already there. So I've picked five other things. Of course, like Grant said, he would be very happy with the entire Beatles catalogue. I'd be very happy with the entire Deep Purple family catalogue.
There
So
you
I've
go.
so
I'm
so
right
I've,
there
I
with
gave
you, Phil. I'm right there with you.
so I've tried to think beyond that,
Right.
and also think what Pete was saying about having picking things that would give me something to explore that maybe I don't know that well. So a mixture of both, really.
Yeah. I totally hear what everyone's saying, went through the same thing. I think this is going to be a lot of fun because even viewers that watch each of our channels individually, I think might be surprised. I know I have some stuff in there I think is going to surprise them. Pete, it sounds like you're going a different route as well, and we'll see if Grant, you just show us a bunch of Beatles albums. Who knows?
I'm only going with one Beatles record.
All right. On that note, Grant, why don't you start off and let's see what you're
Since
taking.
we already know we're going to talk the Beatles for crying out loud, I might as well go with mid period Beatles. So I'm going to go
Oh,
with Rubber Soul,
that's a great one.
and I think I might go with the U.S. lineup because it starts out with "I've Just Seen a Face,"
Hmm.
and then it goes to Norwegian Wood. So this is almost like a perfect folk rock album. I love both the UK version, but the US version really is it's a special thing what Capitol did. And normally I'm against them butchering these Beatle album covers, but there's no bad Beatles. So, but I would go with Rubber Soul if I'm going to pick something today. Uh, I guess I'd go mid period. So that would be what I pick for my first choice.
That's actually my favorite Beatles album, more so because it was one that my mom had as a kid, and I discovered it through going through old records and pulling that one out. But yeah, I could totally see taking that.
Me too. It's a good one.
All right. Oh, Pete, you want to jump in and show us what your first selection is?
Okay, so the biggest issue that I have is, my three musical loves is hard rock, heavy metal, and progressive rock, right? And you could squeeze fusion in there as number four, right? Those are my four
Yeah.
favorite genres. So I'm like, how do you satisfy everything here? You really can't, right? So something's always I could have just picked one from each style, but I kind of didn't really take that. But my first pick is a band that I love a lot. They're probably my favorite band of the last 35 years. And it's my favorite album by this band. But again, since it's a more recent-ish album, it may not, if I were to tell you my favorite 10 albums of all time, it may not show up on that list, but it's an album I love a lot, but I still think it's an album that when I listen to it nowadays, I'm still discovering new things about it. And I want to continue to discover new things about it. So I think to take Dream Theater, Metropolis 2, Scenes from a Memory to a Desert Island, and it's a long one, it's like 80 minutes long.
Right.
It's so complex and there's so much to it that I find that every time I listen to it in recent years, I discover something new about it. And like I said, I want to keep discovering new things about it. And this kind of satisfies my prog. It satisfies my metal, this thing we call progressive metal. And I absolutely love it. And I think over like something like Images and Words,
Mhm.
which was really my first experience with Dream Theater, but I've heard it a million times. I've heard this a lot too, but I think this is a lot more of a deeper, complex album than that one is. And I probably, even though I've heard this a ton of times, I don't really know it like I know Images and Words and maybe some of the other ones. So I think this is the one I want to continue to keep living with. And if I can only take one Dream Theater album to that desert island place for however many years I'm left on this earth, I will take this one. So yeah,
Yeah,
I,
that's my favorite Dream Theater album.
is it really? I
it's a
was just
great
Yeah,
one.
curious if there were any other
yeah.
Dream Theater fans, with us on
I
this.
don't get Dream Theater. I tried. I don't
They
get
don't
it.
sound like the Beatles.
Yeah, they're a
No
bit
furthest
different.
thing from it.
They're
But
more
I still
jazz.
don't get it. The whole
No?
metal prog thing.
Are
I
you
don't.
not? Are you not a prog fan?
No, I'm a big prog fan, but
Okay.
I don't get metal prog at all.
Oh man, I have to say that
Not my thing. Not my
the,
thing.
the later albums that Dream Theater was doing, what was the not the those three albums ago? It's the one that's got the big rock between the
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
something view, room with a view. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
yep,
I absolutely love that album. I don't know
great.
what it is. That is currently my favorite Dream Theater album. If I were taking one, I don't have it in my as a selection today. I would take that. I used to always say that Train of Thought was my favorite, and I
That's
do
the
love
heaviest.
that.
Yeah.
But when this other one came out, replaced it in a heartbeat.
This might be a bit of a tangent, and I'm sorry to apologize. But
Don't
how I do like the prog stuff that Opeth does.
isn't that prog?
Well, but I like it. So
It's also death, right? It's got the death vocal.
no, I don't like that. But
I know, but
what's the album? Pete, help me. The album that looks like they're in a tree. They're in a tree.
Oh, that's what Heritage.
Yeah, jeez, that's killer.
Yeah, well, you like the Opeth stuff that doesn't have the death growls. So
Yeah.
basically, that
Well,
whole
but I like it. I don't get it. I don't make sense at
you
Damnation
all.
is
like it, but you
probably
don't get it. All right.
I think Opeth though is even on another level than even Dream Theater, as far as
I
I'm
mean,
concerned.
it's night and day. The two bands
yeah.
couldn't be further apart. Yeah.
See, it's out of my genre. I do know what I like, and I do like the
We
prog Opeth
we,
without.
we need to do a what is it episode, Pete, where it's talking about the prog metal side of things and
There you go.
what is it,
Probably do. Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I need to know, so we might need to
yeah.
book that because I don't know.
Those of you tuning in here that haven't gone over to Pete's channel, four of us here, and we also add in Scott from the Prog Corner doing the What Is It series. So head over to Pete's channel. You can check this stuff out that we're referencing here.
Yeah.
But on that note, why don't we move on to Phil? You can get us off of potentially off the prog metal. I don't know. Maybe you've got something in there.
No, no, no. My first choice isn't heavy metal or
Okay.
prog. So it is something I thought, depending on the weather, what the weather's like on this desert island, I wanted something that was a bit, a bit different. So I'm going for Ian Hunter live. Welcome
Wow,
to the club
I
from
would not have thought of
1980.
that.
very nice.
Yeah.
I love this album. It was a time late 70s when I was new heavy British heavy metal. I'd been growing up through the 70s listening to metal, hard rock and stuff. And I'd started to want to get into other things, just to experiment with different music. I'd always liked Ian Hunter and Mott the Hoople, but I hadn't really followed his solo career that much. And then I just took a gamble on buying You Never Alone with the Schizophrenic, the studio album that preceded this. He was back with Mick Ronson, and I really loved that album. I was really getting into people like Southside Johnny and bands like that. And I bought this album and I just loved it immediately. I think, the set list is fantastic. Iron Wild, which is a ballad, which was from All American Alien Boy, but the way he says, I'm going to be somebody someday, and you hear someone scream in the audience, it's just got so many iconic moments. There's a few studio tracks on here. Silver Needles, which everyone thought was about Sid Vicious, is actually about Tommy Bolin when he met him in Deep Purple. See, it didn't take me long to find a Deep Purple link, did
Yes.
it? But
What are you gonna do?
Mick Ronson's playing is sublime. He's a very different type of guitarist. He
Yeah.
doesn't follow any specific kind of blues runs or jazz. He's his own guy, and he kind of plays very uniquely. And there's an instrumental on here, FBI, which is by the Shadows, I think, first of all. There's a track called, one of my favorite tracks by Enter, called Bastard, which is about 9 minutes of just great riffage, great stuff. But I just love this album. It's highlight, great double live album.
Yeah, no, that's excellent.
That's
I
awesome.
would not have thought of that, but I know that I don't know, the possibility of grabbing live albums for those extra tracks, but the fact that there's studio and live on that, that's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
great in
yeah,
my opinion.
yeah. Yeah, I have bent the rules even more on some of my other choices. But yeah, I thought a double album, I get twice as much stuff. Yeah.
All right, I guess I'll jump in there. So, as I was saying at the beginning of this, I approached this with definitely a heavy dose of nostalgia, memories. If I pull an album off, it just takes me to a particular time. If I'm going to be by myself on a desert island, not only do I want great music, I want great memories. I want stuff to think about. I want albums that are going to do that for me. And so, out of all the stuff that we've already shown so far, I'm going in a different direction with it in the AOR melodic rock world with Journey and Frontiers from 1983. But this album holds a special place in my heart because it was actually one that my older brothers had. So I grew up listening to them play it kind of really before I discovered it. And song on here, Chain Reaction, Deep Cut, not one that was a single off of here, was my absolute favorite song at the time. So I'd always ask my older brothers to play that for me if they had pulled out the record player. But then you got Separate Ways, Worlds Apart on here, which that opening keyboard that's on it just blows my mind every time. I mean, I think this is a great driving album. Not that I'm going to have a car on this desert island, but I love having this album for that. Cinder My Love, After the Fall. I mean, there's so many great ones. And then Faithfully, which I think is absolutely the best love ballad ever written kind of thing. So I'm going to go down the genre role where I tried to grab something from every different genre that I like. Starting off with this one, got the Journey shirt on. I think a lot of people would have expected me to have a Journey album in here. And normally I would have grabbed the greatest hits, but I decided not to do that. I'm going to just choose albums today. But I did almost go for that one.
That's my favorite. That's just having Pete's favorite Dream Theater album was also mine. Well, that is my favorite Journey album as
Oh,
well.
wow.
Yeah,
That's excellent.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I don't think an album's ever had any more reverb on than that one.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
But it has it's got a certain sound, but it is immaculate,
It's,
absolutely
it's
immaculate.
I mean,
1983.
if
Yeah.
I'm going Journey though, gentlemen, I gotta have Greg Raleigh on there, and I've got to have. We've
Uh,
talked about it
Yeah.
before.
Which
yeah.
was
When Steve Perry and Greg Raleigh trade off vocals,
Infinity, baby.
Yeah.
Infinity.
Mm,
That's
mm.
it for me.
Yeah.
And you know
I
what?
love all those Journey albums, but yeah, Infinity is my favorite.
And when I was a
Oh,
kid, I appreciated it, but not like I do now. Now I put it on and I just go, "Whew." I can't believe it got such bad reviews back in the day because Infinity is a really great record. It's damn near perfection when I listen to it. I don't know. I think it's great. I
Oh,
do. I
I'm,
just love it. I don't get tired of it either. And I didn't even mention that today.
no, no, you didn't. No, no one else has Journey albums in there.
Pete's got to have a Journey album.
No,
No?
Absolutely.
hey, no.
All right, this is going good so far. I am surprised though, Phil, that this is you're saying this was your favorite Journey album, and that I really
Yeah.
felt the five that I picked, there would be absolutely no chance anyone would pick the five, and so far you haven't, and you probably won't. But just hearing how much you like the album, I'm like, wow.
No, it's good because if all four of us are on the same island, we've got some good stuff to listen to amongst us, haven't
Right.
we? So it's
Right.
good.
Yes, that's what we need. The five of us here, then we've got 20 albums.
Yeah, it's good. Hmm.
All right. Grant, what's
Okay.
number two? More
Well, no
Beatles?
one's going to be choosing this. But for when I want to rock out, and this band I credit to wrecking my hearing back in the day because it was the loudest concert that I'd ever been to. And it was distorted. Going to a concert, loud is one thing,
Mhm.
but loud with distortion. I mean, we're talking PA distortion. That's another. That'll
Mm.
wreck you. But still, I like this band. This is my favorite album of theirs. And damn it, no one else is going to pick it, but I'm going to go, since this is my choice for today,
All right.
I'm going to go with Urge Overkill Saturation.
Wow.
This record is, Phil was talking about reverb.
Hmm.
There is absolutely no reverb on this record at all. It is dry as a bone, and it feels like Urge is right there with you playing. But this has got Sister Havana on it, which is
Yeah.
freaking a kick-ass track. Tequila Sunrise, I'm sorry, Tequila Sunrise.
That's the Eagles.
I'm a big monkey. Tequila Sunday is great. Positive Bleeding. The whole damn thing is just rocking. Great songwriting, great production. It was one of those records you can find in the dollar bins all day. I don't know. Maybe people don't get Urge Overkill. I get it. I dig it. So I'm taking this with me on this trip to the island.
Well, that's a surprise to me. I did
Yeah.
not see that one
Right.
coming, but it is a great album. And you're right, Sister Havana, that was the one, that was sort of their big hit, but they also were on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, and they did the Neil Diamond song, Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, right? And that wasn't on an album, right? I think it was later
It
added.
was on an EP.
Right.
Oh, it was on Pulp Fiction, but it was on the Skull EP that came out before.
Right. And then it was later added to your album, but I guess it didn't. Yeah,
No, it never was on Saturation.
I've got a CD with it on it.
Well, damn it, Brendan.
Maybe a reissue.
Cough it up.
Yeah, reissued it after it had already come out, because that had become a hit. They reissued it with it, but it, like, just never really caught on. Unfortunately, that was the song that most people know them for.
Yeah. It would fit right in there, though, I think.
Yeah, totally.
So there you go. Some Urge Overkill.
All right, Beatles and Urge Overkill.
Yeah.
That's going to be
Makes
an
no sense at all.
All right, Pete, what are you pairing with your Dream Theater?
All right, so much like Grant mentioned how he could have easily taken five Beatles albums, I could have easily taken five Black Sabbath albums. I didn't want to do that, obviously, because you want to have some variety here. But then I was like, all right, I need to take one Sabbath album.
You could
Which
take
one
one
do
with
I
each
take?
singer, though.
Technical ecstasy.
No, I would not take that one. No. So, it's hard because it's like, do I take the first album? Do I take Paranoid, Master of Reality, Volume 4, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Sabotage, Heaven and Hell, Mob Rules, Born Again, all these great albums that I love so much, right? I'm like, well, I can't do all that, right? So I was like, I'm looking and I'm looking, I'm looking. I'm like, well, if you can't make up your mind on which studio album to take, let's just take a live album that
And
had
more.
double live CD here. So this is past lives. This is basically like Live at Last, but the deluxe version. And here you got two CDs of vintage Ozzy era Sabbath stuff. I mean, most of my favorite songs are on here. Tomorrow's Dream, War Pigs, Iron Man's on here, Wicked World, Chill in the Grave, Snowblind, blah, 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 on and on. And quite frankly, I could probably make do for the rest of my life just having this. But again, then I'd be like, oh, I really want to hear Heaven and Hell or Mob Rules, and man, I really want to hear Gillan on Born Again. But all that notwithstanding, I would probably be happy with this. So yeah, it's a great live album. Thankfully, we got this even much, much later on, because that was the horrible thing about Sabbath. It's like, I mean, Phil, we had no like
Nothing.
official Sabbath album from the Ozzy era. They put out Live Evil with Dio, and then all of a sudden Live at Last came out, and that wasn't really official. And so we never really had that live document from the original four-piece until we got this years later. I'm glad we finally got this. So yeah, that's what I'm taking. Past Live by Sabbath.
I mean, and that's got a live version of Megalomania on it, hasn't it, as well, which is like
Yep.
absolutely like the holy grail, really. And
Yeah,
also,
there's
that
so much
sounds
stuff on
great.
here. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
got Symptom of the
fantastic.
Universe and Hole in the Sky, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Them like on here. Hand of Doom is on here.
Did it have Dirty Woman?
I don't believe no, Dirty
That's
Woman
too
is not
late
on
for
here.
that
This,
All right.
this was done a little bit earlier than that.
Oh,
This,
okay.
this
I love that
recording just
song every
from,
time they do it.
yeah, Dirty
See,
Woman.
I find it odd that no one's picked any best ofs. I mean, a live album kind of
It's
is
close.
like
That's
best of.
close. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
close.
But no one. Well, it would
Yeah.
Totally
cover a lot
could.
of different things.
Early days, Grant.
Interesting. I know. No, it may happen.
I like best ofs, but they don't, for me, hold the memory that an album does. And I like deep cuts, and best ofs sometimes only have the hits that I know inside and out. So, like I said, I was thinking about it for the Journey because I actually that was the very first thing I ever got by Journey was their greatest hits, and wore that out on cassette. Years later, I got my own copy of Frontiers, but I don't know. I was just thinking if I'm going to a desert island, I don't think I want a greatest hits. I want something that is an album that has both hits and deep cuts. That was just how I was approaching it.
That's why some of the double live albums are so great because you get those deep cuts and the more popular tracks. Whereas a greatest hits collection, you're just going to get those songs you've heard a million times already.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Phil, what's up next for you? What are you pairing with your Ian Hunter?
Right. Saying that there's no best ofs or compilations. Well, there's one about to appear,
Okay.
but this isn't a greatest hits. It is a compilation,
Okay.
and one of my favorite bands is Free. It's Paul Rodgers, Paul Kossoff, and I couldn't pick which album I'd like to take to this desert island. So it had to be the Free Story,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
which is from
there you go.
1973. I know in the States, I know Mr. Popoff is quite cruel about Free, calling them like Bad Company's demo band. But
He's not a fan.
I think Martin said that, didn't he?
He's not a fan of Free at all.
but to me the emotional maturity of these teenagers with songs like Be My Friend and Soon You'll All Be Gone, the guitar solo prowess of Mr. Big, the Hunter, and of course this album also has some deep cuts that aren't available anywhere else. There's a track on here from the band Peace, which is Paul Rodgers' offshoot. There's stuff from Kossoff's solo outings with Simon Kirke. There's so much stuff on here going across the whole part of the band. And I mean, I don't think, was this released in the States? I don't know. It was in Canada
I
with the
don't
Free
think it was
Story.
released here at
No, I've
all.
never seen that.
And in Germany, it came out separately. But I don't think Free were as big in the States as they were over here in the UK. But, there's obviously tracks like Heavy Load. They're so emotionally, they're melancholy. But Paul Kossoff was a guitarist who he literally only needed 5 or 6 notes and he could knock you out with any one of them emotionally. And Paul Rodgers, of course, had that these, as I say, teenagers writing songs about love and angst and all the rest of it, but making it sound so real. So for me, this is the perfect thing to take to my desert island because Free didn't have hits, so to speak. So this really does have lots of deep album cuts, but cuts across every aspect of their output. Finishing on "Come Together in the Morning," which is a wonderful song from Heartbreaker. So the Free Story from 1973.
Good pick.
Very good. Yeah, I like the
Excellent.
idea that you said there's solo stuff on there as well. So, and stuff you can't get anywhere else. So even though it's a
Yeah.
compilation, it still has deep cuts or other things that are on it. Makes it a lot of fun. I've seen that on CD and didn't pick it up because I just thought it was a best of. But now finding out that
No,
there's stuff on there that I can't get anywhere
it's
else.
a very luxurious release at the time with a booklet in it and everything, and they were all numbered.
Oh, cool.
I mean, there was probably thousands and thousands of them. Not like nowadays, a limited edition to be 100, wouldn't it? But there was tens of thousands. But no, it's the perfect introduction to the band, and the perfect album to take on a desert island for me.
All right. So my next one is one that even surprised me when I really got down to it and I thought about it and what I decided to grab here. And this is an album that most fans of the band don't like, but it's actually my favorite album by them, Kiss Dynasty from '79.
Yeah.
So Vinny Poncia produced this thing, gave it more of a disco flair. People even say that I Was Made for Loving You was written as a disco song to have a hit. Paul Stanley's talked about it, but I love that song. I could listen to that song every single day for the rest of my life and be happy. But I actually really like the rest of the album. I think it flows so well on here, but I don't know. I've got this thing where I like these disco infused rock albums. They still rock, but there's that beat to it. And this was just a fun album. I found this years later, meaning I got into them in '92 with Revenge, and I went backwards. I became a big Kiss fan at that point. So I just was buying every one that I would see somewhere when I had some money. And this one hit me in a way that none of the other Kiss albums had. And when I was thinking about, what I'm bringing, and as I was saying, I'm going to go through these different genres. I want to have something. I have my AOR melodic rock stuff, my ballads, that kind of thing. And I was like, I need some straight ahead rock. This is what popped into my head, and I the last couple of weeks been listening to these to really see if they sink in, if they still do what I think they do. So yeah, I'm going with this one. Something
I
different.
bought that the day it came out. I never had an issue with that album. I always enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
that's
Cool.
No,
awesome.
I've always loved it as well. Great album.
We never had an issue when it came out. It was just the next Kiss album.
That's awesome to hear because today it's one of those ones that people always put low in their rankings for the
And
album.
they do it because they don't like the single. Because really, the rest of the album doesn't sound at all like that.
No, it
No,
doesn't.
very true.
The album is so good. Is it Dirty Living that's on here?
Oh yeah,
Peter Criss song is amazing, right?
Hard Times is on there, is it?
that
Right.
sounds great.
That
Yeah,
one's great. 2000 Man, even though that's a cover of the Rolling Stones song, Ace Frehley just, I don't know what it is. He knows how to do covers and he always makes them his own. But yeah, I love that one. All right, Grant.
All right. Well, going back to the 60s again, I do that. I tend to do that. So, but if I'm going back and I'm on a desert island, I've got to have me some Rickenbacker 12 string. So I'm going to go with the Byrds Younger Than Yesterday,
I knew
which
that
is
was coming.
my favorite Byrds album. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's got Roger McGuinn on it, and there's Rickenbacker 12 string galore. And of course, I love me some Rickenbacker 12 string, but this has got So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star on it. It's got Renaissance Fair, which is a Dave Crosby tune, which is just absolutely killer. Uh, Everybody's Been Burned, another Dave Crosby song that's wonderful. Mind Gardens, which, well, that's kind of psychedelic, but that's another Dave. My Back Pages, which is Dylan,
I love
great
that song.
cover. Girl with No Name, Why? I love this record. It's got no Gene Clark on it, but man, top notch. Sounds great. Gary Usher production. Get yours today, kids.
As soon as you said '60s, I was like, he's going to pick a Birds album. Then you mentioned Rickenbacker. I'm like, yes, I'm on the right track. He's going to pick that album, and you did.
Oh, I just those Rickenbacker 12 string going through all those compressors through those Fender dual Showmans or whatever he's running them through. God dang.
I
I
love
love it.
Fifth Dimension. I don't know if any of you guys are fans of that album.
Yeah, it's got 8 Miles High on it,
Yeah,
which is my favorite Birds track. That is freaking awesome. Get me all
I'm a
worked up
fan
on the
of My Back
Birds.
Pages. I love that song. I think that's my favorite. Even though it's a Dylan song, I think they just did an amazing job with it.
Grant, did you ever hear the Golden Earring, like 20-minute version of 8 Miles High? It's very cool.
No, so that's what Slogan was saying in the comments, that's a great version. I've never
Yeah,
heard it.
those old Golden Earring albums are great. Really
Yeah,
cool.
they are. Yeah.
That is one of those bands I have never dived into their old catalog.
Really?
And
That's a rabbit hole you probably should take because I did that like about 10 years ago. And I was like,
yeah.
because I had never owned a Golden Earring album. And I did that. I was like, wow, this band was amazing. Because all I knew was like Radar Love and
Right.
Right.
Mm.
Stone. And wow, so much great stuff in that catalog, especially the early stuff. Like
So
this.
start out right at the beginning.
We'll have a conversation
Well,
offline.
yeah, that's a whole other thing. But Moontan is amazing.
Moontan
Yeah,
is really
brilliant
good.
album.
Start there because that has Radar Love on it, which everybody knows. But their '80s era too, with Twilight and Cut.
Well, those are pretty big records here. I mean, those
Yeah.
did well.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Pete.
All right, so this next band, I wanted to pick the live album, and I ultimately said, but if I pick the live album, I don't get some beloved songs on the studio album, which it's one of my favorite albums of all time, and I never get tired of listening to it. In fact, I was just listening to it at the gym recently. I'm like, ah, for an album that's like 50 years old, Stay in Class by Judas Priest just still sounds fresh to me today.
That's awesome.
And we've talked about how some of those classic live albums have like some definitive versions of some songs, and I will agree that Unleashed in the East is one of those albums. But I was like, man, but then I don't get Saints in Hell, I don't get Beyond the Realms of Death, I don't get the title track here, I don't get Better by You, Better Than Me, and I'm like, there's just too much greatness on this album. It's one of the great early heavy metal albums of all time, and I don't think I could live on that desert island for the rest of my life without something like this, and it has to be this album. So yeah,
Awesome.
Stay in Class by Priest.
You see that's one of those albums that should be released as a double because I bet some of those tracks you've just mentioned would probably be on it then. Especially Beyond the Realms of Death. I'm sure that was recorded, but just being a single album, it's such
Yeah,
a shame they haven't reissued it as a double.
I know. I would agree.
Yeah, they need a deluxe edition of that for sure.
Do like they do with this, Kiss does with Destroyer, like something like that. Could you
Yeah,
imagine?
Yeah, yeah.
Judas Priest needs one
Big
of
old
those.
box set.
Absolutely. I didn't put it into my collection, but I seriously considered putting Judas Priest Painkiller in. That's personally my favorite, and that was the era that I got into the band, and that whole idea of the nostalgia and the great memories that I have of that album. It's also one that I like to go to sleep to. So I thought about, yeah, I know, but it does it for me. Really
Wow.
heavy albums at a low volume for whatever reason, I can fall asleep to that album instantly. Okay, Phil, what's up for you? Number three.
Okay, well, I'm still staying in the world of compilations.
Okay.
Well, my first one was 1980, then I went back to 1973. Now, like Grant, I'm going back into the 60s,
Ooh.
which is unusual for me, really. But it's the Doors and weird scenes inside the gold mine. This isn't a greatest hits package. It's probably the best sequenced compilation of all time for, I think, any band. It doesn't have Light My Fire on it, so it isn't a greatest hits. It has all the deep cuts. And this thing it says on the inside of the cover, this came out in 1972, the album, and it talks about how far away in time and from another world this music sounds like. That was 1967, and this came out in 72. So that's 5 years. I mean, and it does. Even then, when I first ever bought this, um, the things like the end when the music's over, it sounded like it was from another world. And there's all the bands that have come forward from that point. There still isn't anything like the Doors. And if we think of that period from 1967 to 72, it was so transitional, so much change, literally week by week, release by release. But and I know I could have picked the first Doors album or LA Woman or whatever, but this has got all of those tracks on. Plus, it also, not now, but back then, it also had some tracks on that weren't available anywhere else. There were some rare B-sides on there, etc. But I felt that, again, for the Desert Island, this album, which is being released as on CD because so many people love it as a compilation because it's not called the Doors Greatest Hits or the Best of the Doors. It's a unique compilation, and I would say that anyone who wants to know what the Doors were like, this is as good place as any to land, really, because it covers so much stuff. Well, whatever you want it, apart from Light My Fire, which they obviously deliberately thought we don't need to put that on.
Yeah.
Wasn't that like a Rhino handmade release on the CD? Or
Uh,
the
Oh,
I
CD, wasn't it Rhino handmade? I can't remember.
It could, yeah, it could be. Yeah, it is Rhino. Yeah, I'm not.
good
It's not
release.
that old, is it? Because I think there was
I didn't know
public
they.
demand for it to come out.
Yeah.
Because they probably thought there's no point in this existing on CD because there's so many compilations. But they
There
thought,
are.
well, well, what's the point? But I think it's the point is the way it's sequenced. Horse Latitudes is on there, which is a very, very strange track. And having like when the music's over and the end in their full glory. I think it's just fantastically sequenced album.
What's
You
the
know, I've
song?
read something about, I don't know where in my past, but I remember reading some articles and people were saying it's a crime that this was never brought out on CD. Of course, it finally was, or reissued on an album. Because what I've read about it, people were just saying it's just such a unique compilation
Yeah.
and it works so well the way they, sequenced the record that it's just a crime that it had never been put out. So it's good to see that it would really came out.
Yeah, it's a great doorway into this band.
But you know what? I'm just saying, I know we're on a tangent. Think about it. That first Doors album was recorded in 66, came out in 67. I would have thought when people heard that, there was really nothing like that
Mhm.
at that time, like you say, Phil. Think about the end. No, who was doing that?
Here's
Nobody.
my suggestion. I see a future episode of our What If over on Sea of Tranquility. What is it? On the Doors, because I think that the catalog of the Doors is some of the most remarkable music ever made that was never recreated with any other band, and it was so ahead of its time and so in its own kind of bucket. I mean, we could probably talk for a whole hour about the music of the Doors and what is it and why and all that sort of thing. And I'm amazed. I did a bunch of years ago. I did a ranking the album show on the Doors, and and again, I've had these forever, and you listen to them today, and they still sound fresh. And isn't it amazing how many great singles are through that you've heard on the radio throughout all those albums, but at the same token, how many amazing deep cuts are on them. I mean, there's like really no bad songs at all in that whole catalog while Morrison was alive. It's really incredible.
Yeah, it is. Totally agree.
I would second that idea. I think it'd be great to have a full
There you
just
go. Two show ideas so far, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah. I love it when it comes out that way. All right, so myself being a big metal fan, I did need a metal album to take to the desert island. I already said I opted not to go with Judas Priest, which would normally be the one that I would grab. So I'm going with Megadeth's Countdown to Extinction from '92, their fifth album. This one here, I don't know. It may be the little bit more poppy version, right after Rust in Peace, that was full on ultimate thrash metal style. But I love this album. This is one of those ones I can play from start to finish. Does have all the big hits on it, but I like everything else that comes with it. And again, just that time frame for me in 1992, discovering a lot of this stuff brings great memories. Going to midnight releases to get this. So I've got a bunch of things kind of rolled in as far as that. But I realized I needed a Megadeth album. I'm a huge Megadeth fan. And it was a toss up between Peace Cells, Rust in Peace, and this one here. I don't know. I ultimately had to go with this one.
You could say that run from the debut album up to Euthanasia,
Yeah.
pretty spectacular, like from start to finish there.
Yeah.
That's a great run of albums.
I love Euthanasia as well. That's a fantastic follow up. Reckoning Day with the drum intro. All right. So, yes, I had to have some metal in there. All right. We'll move over to Grant.
All right. Well, we're still in the
Number four.
60s, damn it. Phil and I are tag teaming for right now. I'm gonna have to go with Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. And this has been on the greatest album list forever.
Mhm.
Brian Wilson's monumental record. I mean, we wouldn't have, think about it. Because of this record, you know, because of Rubber Soul, we got this. And then without this record, we would not have Sergeant Pepper. So, it's got Wouldn't It Be Nice on it. Absolutely beautiful stuff. Great harmonies. You Still Believe in Me. That's Not Me. God Only Knows is on here.
Mhm.
Gee, many Christmas. Great vocals from Carl. This is the Beach Boys' crowning achievement. Or shall we say it's Brian Wilson's crowning achievement because it's really his record and he added the Beach Boys vocals on it. But I gotta have me Pet Sounds if I'm going to the island.
Yeah, I can see that easily. That would be a great pick. All right, Pete.
All right. My next two are kind of low-hanging fruit things, but it's you got to go with what you love. And we have talked about this album before. Deep Purple, right?
Oh,
Phil and we got to do it, right, Phil?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Again,
It's a Phil to
Do it.
bring one.
do I choose In Rock, my all-time favorite album of any band? I love it. I still listen to it, but I've heard it a million times. Do I take Machine Head, Fireball, Burn? Burn is another one of my all-time favorite. I could do any of those things. I'm like, all
Shades.
right, I got to choose a live album.
Oh, okay.
Do I go to Japan or do I go to Europe? Do I go to Japan? Do I go to Europe?
You go to Europe.
I decide to go to Japan.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
I was wrong.
yeah, Made in Japan is amazing. I think, I almost picked because it's available now, like the Deep Purple last concert in Paris, which was the finale of the Stormbringer tour,
Yeah.
and that basically takes the Made in Europe album and fleshes it out and gives you really all the songs they played live. I almost went with that, but I'm like, as much as I love Mark III, Mark II is like, there's something about this, and this is the deluxe version that has the extra tracks on it. It's got Black Knight and Speed King and Lucille I can do without, but man, you got to have Black Knight and Speed King in this set, right? That's the one thing that the original Made in Japan didn't was lacking. But you got all the mandatory, stuff. The big long solos. Gillan is at the top of his game here. Blackmore Crush is on this. Great. The whole band is firing on all cylinders. It's labeled as one of the great live albums of all time, people, for a reason. I still love it. I still remember being a teenager listening to this over and over and over again, and just I still love it. Made in Japan. Maybe kind of a yeah, we knew that was going to happen pick, but I got to bring it with me. It's got to come
Well,
with.
yeah, I mean, I've already picked that in one of our other two shows, so I thought I couldn't really do it again. But I agree, it's kind of it captures that lineup in full flight at the top of their game. That it's edgy, it's a bit dangerous. You don't know if it's going to work or not. They didn't. It was just recorded while they just took no notice of the microphones and just went for it. I think it's just an incredible live statement.
Hey, I
I
just
just
noticed Phil's got an album just above his right shoulder there.
Mhm.
You're right here,
Oh yeah, I see it.
Abominog. I could easily take Abominog too. As much as I mean, I love the Byron era stuff. That's my favorites.
Yeah,
But man, I have a real soft spot for Abominog. I could easily take that with me as well.
yeah, it's a very good melodic rock A&R album, really, isn't it?
Yes, it
Very
is.
different. Yeah,
Yep.
very
But
good.
you know what? I'm really kind of concerned with Pete taking that because how can you not take In Rock? That is your baby.
It is, but I know it so well.
But to go
And
the rest of your life and never hear it again?
Grant, you can
I
only
can't
take
do
one
it.
Beatles album, remember?
Yeah.
Damn it. Crap. Yeah, you're right.
Plus, I have a couple of my favorite songs are already on this live album.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
got
Child
that.
Inside Me.
So
Yeah,
yeah, would I
That
be
is a good
missing?
record, though.
I would be missing Hard Loving Man and a couple of
yeah.
Into the Fire. But yeah, I get it. But
Can you do that again? Can you do
That'll be the tagline for
Be on
this.
the playback. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
Brandon, cut that part out, edit it, put it right in the beginning, and
there's your
then
trailer.
That's
there's
right.
yeah,
your
That's the
trailer.
trailer for this.
I like it.
Yeah, well, like with Black Sabbath and Deep Purple having had so many different lineups, different singers, I looked at both the catalogs and I just couldn't settle on
It's
one.
hard, right? It's really hard.
I
Yeah, that's
love the
my two
cover
favorite
girl.
bands of all time, right? So what do you pick? You got to have at least one. So
Yeah, it's like, if I take the Ian Gillan era, which I love, then I don't get Coverdale. And I absolutely love the Coverdale era stuff, you know. But like you said, and then they had Ian Gillan singing, or not Ian Gillan, or I'm thinking Black Sabbath now, but over in the Black Sabbath camp, it's like Ian Gillan singing on Born Again. It's like, so what do you take, right? In the end of the
I
day,
love Born Again. I could easily take that as well.
I'm still waiting for the remix on that. That he
We'll see. It's
one
coming
day
apparently.
yes, it's
says
coming. It's
he's
on its
doing
way,
it.
apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they
just
got to
wonder
get
if
this.
you can
They got to
save
get
it.
this July 15th show out of the way first before we get any more
stuff.
Mm.
Black Sabbath
Yeah.
reissues.
Right. All right, Phil.
Right. I'm coming out the 60s, but I'm going to park in 1973.
All right. Yeah.
Nice
Quadrophenia
choice.
by The Who.
There you go.
This is another emotional thing because of when it came out, when I heard it, and to me, it's an album full of many deep cuts from The Who. But I nearly chose Live It Leads, the live album. Tommy always felt a bit too old for me, really. Who's Next was close, but this one to me is where Roger Daltrey's voice just arrives in the style that makes him such a great rock singer. The songs themselves, even the instrumentals, Quadrophenia, the rock, 515, the Real Me, which of course Wasp did a great version of. Um,
Brandon's
um,
gonna push that
I,
album forever.
yeah, I just love this album. I mean, it was one of these things. I was so obsessed with it. I bought the sheet music. I bought multiple copies on CD. I bought the Super Deluxe Edition box set as well. Which I bought that for the 5.1 mix, which of course only put about 5 tracks on it. So for those of you watching, the Live in London version also comes with the 5.1 mix of the original album. But I think it's timeless. I think it's got, Love Rain Over Me is such an emotive song. Um, everything really. I mean, I could just list them all, but it is in my head. I've had enough. Dr. Jimmy is a great rock song. I think to me, it's my favorite Who album, and obviously one of my Desert Island discs. It's just perfect.
Do
Lots
you
of
like the Quadrophenia soundtrack?
Um, I'm not so I'm not so keen on the soundtrack or the film, to be honest.
Oh, I
And I know,
love the film. I
yeah,
love that
but
film.
this itself, I think because when I first heard it, I was probably about 14, 15, and it's been with me for so long. I created my own movie in my head, I guess, to the storylines and the songs. So to see someone else's interpretation of what it was all about, um, because the mods and the rockers thing, which is where it's set, I was actually too young for that. So I didn't associate myself with it. I know that some people, I've had a couple of people in the States say to me, "Oh, they don't relate to this album so much because it feels so UK reference because of what it was about." But to me, I never heard it as part of that. To me, it's just kind of like somebody who doesn't quite fit in, trying doing his best to make his way through the world, and that's how I associated it really.
So I just have one more question, Phil. Are you a mod or are you a rocker?
I think I would class myself as a rocker, not a mod.
I'm just trying to get that cleared up.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. But that's the other thing, isn't it? Because I always saw the Who as a rock band, which is another reason why I was confused when they associated themselves with the mods and the Vespa scooters and everything. Because by the time I entered the world of the Who, it was Who's Next, and that elongated version of My Generation from the live album when it was riffs and rock. So the early stuff, the album that you were holding up there, Grant,
Yeah.
I I found that quite a difficult egg to crack to get into that world of the Who. That one's easy,
There you
but the Who
go.
sellout I actually
Oh,
found
brilliant.
problematic for ages.
Oh, I
It's
love
the
it.
one Who
My
album I
favorite
don't.
Who album.
Yeah, I don't own that for that reason because every time I've heard it, it just does not work for me at all.
What's even better is the box set. There's a sellout box set that
It's
came out.
huge, isn't it? Yeah, it's probably as huge as the
Phil,
Quadrophenia one.
Phil's all over Quadrophenia, but I'm all over Who
Yeah.
sellout.
I know.
Well, that's okay because if we're all on this island together, then we've
Yeah.
got, we've got at least two Who albums, so that's fine.
The box. Here's the box set.
All right.
I have to admit, it's
Extra
pretty
copy.
impressive how all these things are so close to hand.
I know, right? They're just right there.
It's just the way I am.
No, it shows what they mean to you though when they're that close to the area that
It
But
does,
you.
doesn't it? Yeah.
the
Right,
beautiful of the
right.
Who sellout box set, it's got all the tracks that were rejected, like all the other ads, like the Jaguar ad, the Coca-Cola ad. And those are all songs within themselves, and they are all brilliant. Townsend was just on a Pete Townsend just absolutely is a songwriter. Come on.
Yeah.
One of the greats.
Oh yeah.
And just the outtakes that are on here is well worth the price of admission. So I'm just saying.
But that's not one of the ones you're taking?
I'll take this for my next one. No, I'm not taking that. I could.
Yeah, you could. You
Yeah.
could. All right.
Um,
Well, for my next one, and we recently did a show on Pete's channel for the What Is It, where we talked about this band ad infinitum, trying to decide what they are. I consider them prog. I'm bringing some Pink Floyd, and I got to go with my favorite album. I do love the Waters era stuff. Wish You Were Here and Animals. They're absolutely fantastic. But this was my album. This was the album I'd gotten into the band around 92, 93, and this comes out in 94. And so everything else was stuff I was discovering. But this was my era, my album, and it just registered with me. And then the hoopla that happened at the time where they had the big blimps that were going around with the versions of these things painted on the side and the announcement of it. It was one of those things that just kind of took over radio, TV, everything. When Pink Floyd announced they had a new album going on tour, I was a young kid. I think I was just 16. But I don't know, it hit me in a way that I'd never experienced something before. And the sound of this stuff, just nobody has ever duplicated what Floyd sounds like. Ultimately, I'm a Gilmour fan, his guitar playing and the sound of his guitar. So I love the era that is him without Waters in it. But this is an album that I've never gotten tired of. And I do know it inside and out, but yet for some reason I can still listen to every single thing on here. Maybe also because it doesn't have huge radio hits on it. I mean, the album still sold a few million copies, but High Hopes, Take It Back, those kind of songs, they're not the ones would have to be played in a concert the way that the older stuff would. And so it is a little bit of a, quote, deep cuts in that regard kind of thing. If you're listening to the radio, they're not playing these, even though there's a lot of people that love this album. But yeah, I'd have to go with that. I got to have that one. That would be my action. If I was grabbing one album, this would be the one album that I'd have to take.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
It's all down to that your doorway, isn't it? We've talked about this before.
Yeah,
the doorway into a band. It doesn't matter what anyone else might think who's got decades of experience of that band. If that's how you came in, it will always have, and it will be emotionally charged because of it, won't it? It's amazing.
So far, these three albums were my doorway into the groups. So it certainly is that.
There's another show there, Doorway Albums, where you end up liking something that no one else, well, not no one else does, but other people perceive it differently.
All right, third show idea, ladies and gentlemen.
Third show idea. Yeah, we'll save that one maybe for this group, this series here. Keep the other ones that Pete talked about for the what is it on his channel, because those are good. Yeah,
you guys are writing this down.
I love it. Doorway albums.
Well, what was the first one we had for the what is it? I got the door.
It was we were talking Opeth, we were talking Dream Theater.
Prog metal. Yeah.
Prog metal.
Yeah.
What is prog death jazz metal?
Exactly.
What is it? And can you turn Grant onto it enough that he likes it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the title.
That's the goal. There's the show right there.
Can we turn you onto it?
Grant doesn't like this. Can we change his mind?
Yep.
Yeah. Right. And then don't forget.
It's happened. I like Grand Funk now, so it's happened.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at that.
Oh, I could have taken Shining On with me on this desert island. I like it that much.
Wow, you've come a long way.
A long way. I love Shining On.
Yeah, great album.
Holy crap, that's a good record.
That's one of my favorite box.
That and American Band. I'm good.
Yeah.
All right, Grant. Well, on that note, what is your final fifth album?
My final pick, I've got to take this with me because this is one of those records that really connected to me like in 1991 when it came out. This is a record that this artist was on A&M Records back in the day. Okay, first they were signed to Columbia. Columbia dumped them, got signed to A&M, made one record. We had management changes at A&M. And then the artist had no support. It sat on a shelf for a year. Then it got picked up by Zoo Entertainment. And the fact that this record sat on a shelf for a year and could not get any traction, this is one of my all-time favorite albums of all time. I know this might be contrarian, but I'm going to have to go with Matthew's Sweet Girlfriend because I'm going to have some power pop. And I think this whole record is brilliant. You've got Richard Lloyd, Robert Quine playing guitar on here. You've got Divine Intervention, I've Been Waiting, Girlfriend, Looking at the Sun, Winona. God, Jesus. Evangeline's on here. This is a perfect record. It rocks. It's very dry. It's kind of like Urge Overkill.
Mm-hmm.
Very dry. There's absolutely no reverb on it.
No
From
reverb.
the same era,
So
right?
when you play it, if you've got a good system, it sounds like Matthew Sweet and the band is right there. And I think most of this album was recorded live anyway. So it has a very live feel, very energetic, very sporadic sounding. The guitars sound like they could just spin off into outer space because Richard Lloyd, who was in Television, and Robert Quine, who was in uh, Richard Hell's band, two great players. But man, the way they approach their playing is just very strange, very odd. But great record. Highly recommend it. Get it in your dollar bin today.
I guess you were going to go power pop, but I thought you might pick the Jellyfish second
Oh,
album.
well, I could,
Yeah.
I
but I
thought
have
there'd
to
be some
take a
deep
Matthew
cuts in
Sweet
there.
record with me, probably before a Jellyfish record.
Okay. All right.
Did you consider any Cheap Trick?
Yeah, but I couldn't. Yeah, I would take Heaven Tonight if I was going to take one.
I
But
thought.
I tried to find it and I couldn't find it.
Oh.
So we went with our
On a desert
Overkill
island.
instead.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That replaced your Cheap Trick.
Well, Brendan, this is an impossible task.
Yeah, I
So
know.
It is.
Only 5 albums. I had a list that started with a list of 10 and trying to narrow it down to the 5. And while I'm trying to narrow it down, I kept adding more albums to the list. And it was just like, I couldn't do it. I eventually settled
if
on
you
what I
if
settled
you
on.
asked me a couple days ago, I probably would have taken this with me.
Really?
Oh, love that record. That great
You're
Guess Who album? I love it.
really surprising me with some of your picks today.
Oh, I'm out of control.
All right,
And I
Pete.
could have taken Slade and Flame, but I didn't take
Oh,
that either.
yes.
Yes,
That's a
See,
good.
Phil
Yes.
likes that.
I could
Yeah.
always go for some glam rock.
Mm.
So I've
How
been
about
sitting
that,
here.
Phil? How about
I,
Yeah.
that one?
There you go.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I probably would have taken Slatest, which is a compilation, but
It
had
is. Yeah.
singles on it that weren't on the albums. So
Hmm.
that sort of guys that Phil was talking about there. I love that album.
Bebop
Taking
Deluxe.
some of these.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bebop Deluxe. Yeah, yeah. Well, all right. So save that for the end because we're going to go around with some other ones that maybe shoulda, coulda, woulda picked. Right, Pete? What are you ending up? What's your fifth one?
So as you guys saw, I got up before I went to the shelf and grabbed something is because I was sitting here listening to Phil talk about Quadrophenia and I'm like, yeah, one of the great double albums of all time. And I'm like, oh shit, I forgot my favorite double album of all time. And it's got to be on this list. So I took a look at that live album that was sitting here. I'm like, yeah, sorry, Strangers in the Night. Physical Graffiti's got to be my final pick.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
I
know how I
didn't.
didn't think about this. I
I
was
didn't
like,
either. I didn't either. That is a great one.
yeah, because I generally, when you think about the great I keep wanting to say double live, double albums, double studio albums of all time. I mean, Quadrophenia, Physical Graffiti are like the top of the mountain, right? And so as soon as Phil brought that in, I'm like, oh man, yeah, this is one of my favorite. This is my favorite Zeppelin album. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. What's so great about this and why this makes such a great pick to take to the desert island because it's a double album, but it has everything that Led Zeppelin does so well on here. You want the heavy stuff? It's on here. You want the bluesy stuff? It's on here. You want the kind of funky hard rock? It's on here. You want the folky stuff? It's on here. Everything is here. Classic songs, some of the greatest deep cuts on any album are on this album. So, we all love Kashmir and, the bigger songs, but it's got The Rover, it's got Custard Pie and In My Time of Dying and Wanton Song and, all these, trampled underfoot. I can go on and on and on. This is an amazing, amazing record. And it's got everything I need on a desert island from Led Zeppelin. I don't need to bring Stairway to Heaven. I don't need to bring Whole Lot of Love. I just need everything that's on here. So that's my final pick.
I agree with that. That I could listen to that record. I never get tired of Physical Graffiti. I could listen to it over and over again, Pete.
I hear you. Yep. Yep. It's
Yeah,
got a
it
little bit
might
of
be
everything.
either, and you know what's, it's just like a lot of these were outtakes too, which
Right.
I find if that's outtakes,
Right.
these guys are brilliant.
Yeah.
But it gives it a sort of compilation, not a feel, but in the sense that outtakes from different albums. So like you're saying, Pete, you're getting stuff from those, even though it's not the songs on the albums. You're getting all those eras in one album.
Like, how does Houses of the Holy
Yeah.
not wind up on the album Houses of the
How's the
Holy?
Holy?
It's a
Yeah.
great song,
But
but
you know
happy
what's
to have
great?
it on here, right?
But you know what's great about physical graffiti? Even though some of these songs are pulled over different periods, they all sound like they belong together. The
Yes,
sound on the record,
it's very cohesive, right?
Yeah,
it's
it's very,
very
yeah.
cohesive. And for
Yep.
that to really happen, it's just amazing. Yeah, but how can Houses of the Holy not be on Houses of the Holy?
That always drives me nuts when
Wow.
the title track appears on the next album.
Yeah.
Def Leppard did it with On Through the Night, appearing on High and Dry. It's
But
like,
it's such a great song, though.
I know, I know, I
I don't get. I kind of like it though. That when bands do that, though,
know.
you know.
All right, Phil, final album.
Okay. Well, this is going to be a purple one. But I've already had Burn and Made in Japan on the other two shows we've done, and I did think about In Rock. Could have been that one. But I thought because In Rock was the first one I bought, but I thought no, it's going to be the one that actually over the years has become my third favorite Deep Purple album. So it's going to be Come Taste the Band. And when this first came out in the UK, we were such huge Blackmore fans that most of me and my friends didn't get into this band until this album until they'd literally ground to a halt and disbanded because you just thought you can't have Deep Purple without Richie Blackmore. So I'm not going there. But when I did, I realized that this was a totally different band and musicians like Ian Pace, his drumming changed at this point between here and Pace, Ashton and Lord. He kind of was reinvented with the kind of funk jazz influences coming from Tommy Bolin. Coverdale's voice was richer and deeper. Martin Birch's production was gave this a timeless feel, really. Glenn Hughes on Getting Tighter, that riff, everything about it. I know that the opening track, Coming Home, is a vehicle for Tommy Bolin to do all his licks and everything, which became his trademark. And John Lord takes a more of a backroom position, really, to let Bolin come forwards. But on You Keep On Moving, it's such a wonderful song, and that double track guitar solo at the end. It is, I think, it makes you wonder what might have happened if the drugs hadn't become too much to the fore. What could they have done if they'd done another album? If they hadn't had the pressure of trying to live recreate some of the older Mark II and Mark III stuff? Because this was a new band, a new sound. And as you look back at it now through the lens of time, I feel it's kind of like where rock could have gone. It's to me, it's that important. And Tommy Bolin got me into jazz, took me down all sorts of rabbit holes, really. But I think he's a much missed musician, but this is a great part of the Deep Purple story and catalogue.
And you guys weren't alone there. That album was kind of ignored here as well. I didn't listen to Come Taste the Band for many years because I was just like, no,
I found it only in
no
this.
Blackmore on there. How good can it be?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. I got into it simply just because going down the rabbit hole of Coverdale stuff, being a White Snake fan, getting into Burn, absolutely loved it. Stormbringer, and I was like, well, I got to get this next one here. But who's this guy Tommy Bolin on there? I've become a big fan of his work, what stuff he did with James Gang, making those two albums over there absolutely fantastic, and his two solo albums as well.
I
yeah. And
know
he's
it's
all
got no,
yeah,
well, no Blackmore, but we have to mention that for a legacy band, Deep Purple and what they've been producing with their last few albums,
yeah.
Mhm.
the Bob
The Bob
Ezrin
Ezrin
records.
period. Yeah,
The Ezrin stuff is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my God. So if there's people out there going, oh, no,
Yeah.
really
Whoosh
yeah,
is awesome.
top
yeah,
notch stuff, man.
Yeah. Now What is so progressive. It's amazing. I was
yeah.
really
It is.
impressed by that album.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, I'll go into my final one here. Everyone on my channel knows that I am a massive glam metal fan. That is where I started. That is a doorway to music for me, at least in the sense of what I came up on. And normally I would, have had something like the Rat album on here. I think this is I think I showed it on Perfect Tens. I
Yeah.
absolutely love this thing. But I didn't want to repeat that, and I started to really think about some other albums that are perfect in that way. And again, going down that nostalgia thing, just albums I have great memories with. So I'm going with Winger in the Heart of the Young from 1990. I've always kind of envisioned this band. They're like the glam metal progressive glam metal band. The writing that Kip Winger does is far beyond anything that was in the standard glam metal, sleaze rock fare of stuff, and just wrote some amazing songs. I think this one absolutely outshines the debut, but it was, again, the first one that I got into. And I just have had such great experiences with each of the band members. For this album here, Reb Beach came and did a guitar clinic that I went to, and I got to meet him there. And then they were doing a show that night. I got backstage, so I met the whole band at that. Lovely guys. And years later, I've met Kip Winger a number of different times in the same thing. So the graciousness of the guys and those memories for me, along with an album that I think is top notch, part of the reason I'm choosing this one. But got to have that. So for me, at least, I'm trying to hit all the different genre eras that I love and bring something. So no matter what mood I'm in, I've got it. That's kind of how I ended up in this thing. I don't know. Any of you guys listen to Winger? I know it's glam
I
metal.
love Winger, and I
I
honestly,
yeah.
I've always had a hard time lumping him in with the whole glam and hair metal thing because I always thought they were just a terrific hard rock band. I think they released, 17 in the video first, and it's just like I think that just kind of pushed them down this kind of track that they really didn't belong in. But is the first two albums were really great. Man, I think they did some of their best albums after those first two. Like their more recent ones are so good,
Yeah, I
so
think
good.
the album Four is absolutely amazing. I did a ranking recently and put that one in, and one of my, I think, in the top slot for me.
Great
Just
stuff.
Well,
outstanding.
one of my backups was actually Paul by Winger.
Poe's great.
Yeah,
Great
I think
album.
that's absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I did want to go around and do that here and see what if there was an album that you almost did or would have done. And so I had shown the Rat because that is one that would normally be considered it. But I still think, and I will say this, I think Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction is one of the greatest rock albums ever. But I know it inside and out. I know how everyone feels here about this. I saw those faces
Absolutely
the
out of his
last time.
mind.
The
I tried to
point,
keep a stone face there.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, good poker.
Sorry. Can you edit that out?
Yeah. No, but the point that I'm showing it is that for me, it is that perfect. It is that great album, but I know it too well. I don't reach for this all that often, so I opted not to put it in. Yet I'll still say how great of an album is. So that one I bypassed for the five. But Grant, I know you pulled up a couple others
Yes.
you showed already, but was there an album that we should have expected normally you'd show, but opted not to?
Well, I think if I was gonna show something, I probably would have taken, well, this is low-hanging fruit just because it's sitting here. But I'd probably take some XTC, and I suppose I would probably choose Skylarking or Apple Venus.
Yeah.
I think Apple Venus is probably my favorite, and that was a later album.
Hmm.
But I think I could take Skylark and be just content as can be.
Great
Yeah.
album.
Black Sea, I could take that. I could take Drums and Wires. I'd be happy with that. Just so I have me some XTC, and I don't know, I guess I could have chose this.
Pete, what would you have grabbed? Is there? Would
Well, I mean,
you?
I had Strangers in the Night by UFO sitting here, but I was
Yeah.
also thinking I could take Grand Illusion by Styx,
Oh,
Out
that's
of
a
the
good one.
Blue by ELO, Slide It In by Whitesnake or the 87 album,
Right,
Rainbow Rising. I mean, those are ones that just come to mind that I could easily take. Kiss Alive.
right, right. Yeah, and I was thinking, because I know how much you love Mob Rules by Black Sabbath, that could have appeared in here. You went the live route with, that one. So, and then Phil.
It could have been Bridges Size, Robin Trower,
Oh,
Wishbone
boy.
Ash,
Yeah,
Wishbone Ash, Argus,
Yep.
Riot, Narita is one of my favorites. Damnation by Opeth, Crimson Idol by Wasp.
really? Wow.
Yeah, I love that
Well,
album.
you got an eclectic taste that goes more down the road of stuff I listen to. I didn't even realize that
I
you.
don't see Phil as a Wasp listener, but
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. I
I'm
I
good
just
with that.
I love that album. I mean, I know
Shows the kind of
we
stuff.
talked about that a track from it on our songs that define a guitarist on your show, Pete, didn't we? It's what's his name? Bob Kulick, is it? On guitar. It's
Yep.
just stunning. But yeah, there's Bob Seger, Nine Tonight. I love that as a live double as well. Tons of stuff I could have picked, really. Oh, and of course the obvious
Nice to hear the
ones.
Riot pick, Phil. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, I love that album. I know it. I mean, I love Riot because of the way that they were like a traditional rock band, and then they became like power metal band in the 80s, didn't they? The way that Mark Reel was able to reinvent his style of playing to all these different genres of rock music. Yeah, and of course the first Montrose album, which I've already mentioned in a different show.
Yeah, so there you go, guys. Definitely five picks that we all did, 20 selections here, but then we all threw in a bunch of extras and a lot of tangents. So far more than 20 albums that could be taken to a desert island. And obviously this is all our opinions, our personal faves. A lot of things went into it for me. I talked a lot about the memories and the nostalgia of each thing as to why I chose. Some of these were those quote doorway albums, which I think might be a great topic for the next show that we'll do here. But obviously, this could go any number of ways. On a different day, we'd probably all pick five different ones. So just take it for what it is on here. And certainly, guys, watch who's viewing this. Chime in, let us know the five that you would be taking on a desert island. So on that note, we're going to wrap up here, but I want to go around the room. Grant, what do you have coming up on your channel over the next week?
Well, I started a new series, and I never do shows by myself, but I went, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. So I'm doing a series. I've named it One Band, One Artist. So what it is, it's like an 8-minute show.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm going to do is briefly talk about a band that probably no one talks about, like the Nymphs.
Okay.
Talk about it a bit, play 2 tracks from it.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of turning you on to these bands that fell through the cracks.
I like
Bands
that
that,
idea.
I mean, I just did one on the band Fickle Pickle, and this is phenomenal.
Really?
Oh
I
my
not
God,
know
this
this
is
band.
great. Don't let the cover art fool you, but this is like a 3 CD set.
Or the name of the band.
Right.
Yeah.
They were a studio band. They worked out of the Morgan Studios. These guys were producers, engineers, but they were also like in 3 different bands.
Hmm.
Well, Orange Bicycle, I think, was one band. A lot of these because this album came out like 1970. Check it out. Grant's Rock Warehouse. Go check it out.
Yeah,
Top
definitely.
notch stuff.
All right, Pete, what do you have coming up on your channel?
So I'm assuming this is airing early in the week, so I do want
This is
to
yeah, this is going to air on Tuesday.
Tuesday. So folks, I just asked Phil about Riot before. So I just did a huge hour-long ranking the albums of Riot episode that aired on Sunday. So go over to Sea of Tranquility and watch that. I take all 17 albums, I rank them in the
Wow.
order that I like them. It was a massive undertaking, but loads of fun because it's a great catalog. So if you want to know a little bit more about the band Riot, beyond Narita and Restless Breed and Fire Down Under, please go check out this episode. Also, Martin Popoff and I did an episode talking about our favorite productions from Bob Ezrin. So again, we talked about Bob Ezrin before. So that all just happened on Sea of Tranquility. More stuff happening this week. As always, we're always busy over there. So yeah, go check it out.
All right. And Phil, what do you have coming up on your channel?
Well, it's when the time this goes out, it's Richie Blackmore week over at Now Spinning Magazine because he's 80 on Monday, the 14th. So we're ranking his top 12 instrumental tracks. I've got an interview with Candice Knight going out as well, and also one with Russ Ballard talking about the tracks he wrote for Rainbow. And I've also got the review show and a couple of other things as well. So yeah, very busy.
Cool,
Why
cool.
won't Richie talk to us?
Yeah,
His wife is wonderful, but I mean, come on, man. It's like, Richie, talk
Richie,
to
don't.
us, please.
yeah,
He's not going to do that.
No, that's
yeah.
always been Richie.
And because the weird thing is probably when I did talk to Candice, he's thinking that Richie was probably just out of shot at the other end of the sofa, wasn't he?
Yeah.
You could hear everything.
He's over there grumbling on the side, right? It's like,
Yeah.
why did he ask that question?
Yeah. And then certainly we want to send out well wishes to him, right? He
Yeah.
recently suffered a heart attack, which has affected shows that he was going to do. So hopefully he is going to be on the mend
Yeah,
soon.
Godspeed, Richie. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and over here on my channel, I just did a whole bunch of stuff the past week getting ready for Record Store Day. And on this past Sunday, I just posted my experience video of having gone to Sound Exchange and filming that whole thing, interviewing people and showing you behind the scenes stuff. So wrapping all that sort of stuff up. I've got some new videos coming up, new ones with Anthony Coviello, the owner of the store. Do a sort of a 5 questions to a record store owner, the types of things that we always want to know about the behind the scenes and stuff that goes on there, asking him about that. And on Thursday, if everything goes well, I'll be posting an interview with Jizzy Pearl of Love Hate, who has also fronted LA Guns, Rat, Quiet Riot, Adler's Appetite. So this guy's been around the block doing a lot of different things. In my opinion, very underrated, never really gets the love that he deserves, probably because he's always a replacement singer in these big bands. But yeah, he's going to be on. I'm going to talk about his new album. We'll get into some of those other projects and stuff. So tune into that on Thursday. But all right, there you guys go. 5 albums that we would all take to a desert island. Let us know the ones that you guys out there would pick. Let us know the number one favorite one and why. That'd be great. And we'll see you next time. We'll see you real soon. So for Grant, Pete, and Phil, I'm Brendan. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.